In a world where everyone is looking for your money up front, doesn't it just make sense to check out a podcast that's looking to give you something for free? Like the music for your content and free music for your film and videos? Look no further. It's the Tim Kulig Free Music Podcast. Hey, welcome back everybody to the Tim Kulig Free Music Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Kulig, and this week we're doing two things. I've got a guest in the house, Thomas Edward Seymour. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here.
We're also recording this via Zoom, so we will have this on my YouTube page, which is super freaking cool. So, how's things going, man? Thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast tonight.
Yeah, man. Things are going well. I got a number of creative projects, but I think ultimately we're here to celebrate Mr. Tim Kulig breaking the 500 song barrier.
By two tunes.
502 published songs, royalty-free songs available for anyone to use. I think it's incredible. I'm gonna clap for you. I know it's been several years in the making, but you've cranked out some serious tunes this year, man.
Well, and a lot of my audience probably doesn't know this, but you're a huge inspiration and an impetus for this whole thing. So,
thanks, man.
Background on it for some of you folks out there, literally connected me with my mentor, Kevin MacLeod, and I'm following in his footsteps. And the reason I'm doing it is because of the project we did on Kevin MacLeod together. And it's just like to go back in time 3-4 years ago and to think that like this is where I was going to be right now. I was going to have 502 songs published, music pretty much all over the internet, probably listened to at this point millions of times.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the low estimate, it's like maybe 2-3 million, but it could be, you could potentially have, is possibly 10 million listens on all of your catalog. It's very possible. That documentary I did was called MacLeod, There Can Be Only One.
Love it.
It's about Kevin MacLeod, and because I'm a big fan of Kevin MacLeod and his music. And but one of the parts of the documentary is it was like an attempt to try to crunch some kind of numbers on his catalog. And we had a sort of soft estimate, like I think it was like we presumed we had some weird statistic, right? Something about 2% of the time a song could be used or something. Do you remember some of the math?
Yeah, we did. It's funny. I'm thinking back at the math a little bit, and I know part of it was super conservative. Like you had recorded a bunch of stuff at one point that was saying like, okay, if we took one song and we just assumed like 1/10 of 1% or something crazy like that, we're actually using it
low. Yeah. Well, it was like, so just for the context, we're talking about songs that Tim did or songs that Kevin did. In the doc, it was more about Kevin and his catalog, and it was just trying to figure out so the amount of people we could track, how many people listened, and then how many people downloaded, and that data was like clear. You could see it. That was real data. And so like for every it was something like for every 100 listens, it could be like 4 people downloaded.
Right.
But then the tricky math is that, let's say it's 4%, then that stuff, I cut it in half. I said, let's say only half, let you download a song, but you only use half the songs you downloaded, which I think is a fairly reasonable assumption.
Yeah, because a producer will grab a batch of songs and think about, oh, well, maybe I'll use this, or this. They end up using one of them, right?
Yeah. So if you, and then basically you do this weird multiplier, it's just a guess, but the average, still to this day in the entertainment category in YouTube, the average YouTube video is like 8,000 views, and that's based upon the videos that get several billion views and the videos that get like 100 views, you know, it
Right.
all averages out to about 8,000. But then you could take that 2,000 and then multiply, you take that 2% and multiply it by potentially 8,000. Anyway, so it was like, it definitely wasn't foolproof math, but it was super conservative for McLeod, but it easily put his listenership in the billions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if we use that same super conservative math with your stuff, you're in the millions, which it's pretty amazing. Because we were just talking about it. It's like it I think it took you and I a little time to wrap our heads around just giving music away for free.
Yeah.
Obviously, I
Yeah.
enjoyed using free music as a filmmaker, but I think for you, at some point, I don't know what I should throw it back to you. When do you think that that switch went off and you're like, oh no, like if I hold on to this catalog and put a paywall, I'm gonna get like very limited listenership. If
Right.
I give
Right.
it all for free and people use it in their YouTube videos, then the sky's the limit, you know?
Yeah. Well, I had started before I used DistroKid as my distribution network for all my tunes. I was using TuneCore, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And at the time they had a model where, it was like $50 an album. So I did my first album with them. My this is probably inverted on the
Yes.
screen. But
Pieces of Time. Oh, very
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably reversed. But
No, it looked good.
there was like it was an EP basically. It was like 6 tunes, and I hosted it on there, and a couple of people bought it, but you know I at the time it was streaming some places, but I wasn't getting any traction with it. I
Yeah.
think there was some YouTube channel that they just posted it to, but like it was kind of painful. It was like $50 an album. Like that's gonna get expensive. I better have
Yeah.
like 30 song albums or whatever. How many songs can I cram on an album each time?
Yeah.
It's like what? And then I stumbled across this DistroKid thing, and it's just amazing that like for 40, $50 a year, for a single artist, you can publish as many songs as you want. I was like, yes, please, let's do it this way. Like this is crazy. And it went to like all the socials. It went to, all the streaming sites, all the socials and everything. And I'm just like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how it's gonna work. But around that time, we were talking about the doc for your MFA, the capstone that you had, like your
Yeah.
your whole thesis there. And it was funny. It's like you planted that seed as we were like doing some rough edits and stuff. And you're like, it might not be a bad idea to like do this. Cause like you want to get your stuff out there. Like maybe Kevin's got something here. Cause I mean, he's been around forever and he's still doing it. So it's
Yeah.
clearly he's making money somehow. Right. And I'm like, yeah. You know, that sounds really good. And then you do the interview with me for the doc, and it literally just dawned on me, probably at that moment, that I'm like, this is exactly what I think I should be doing. Like,
Well,
why aren't I doing this?
it's funny, yeah. Like I actually wanted to ask you, was it because when I interviewed you for the doc, we had talked a little bit about it. I thought it was like you were fascinated by it.
Hmm.
I thought, what McLeod did was just awesome. But I I think maybe during that interview you were just because I remember a- asking a question back to you. I'm like, wait a minute, you're gonna do that? You're like, I'm doing it, and like literally in that documentary, you're like, oh no, I'm doing this.
Yeah,
And I think like you'd seen enough information on it and just was like, why not? Like,
yeah.
um,
Like the opportunity to have people all over the world be able to hear your music and enjoy it and use it for various projects. I
Yeah,
mean, there's people on YouTube now that I'll go and check out their videos, and they're like what I like regulars, you know? They're
yeah.
people that come back to the places that I distribute stuff and grab the latest thing and they put it into their content. And I'm like, super sweet, man. It's awesome that you're using my stuff again. I appreciate it very much. And I'm like watching their videos. So I'm consuming some of their content while also, you know, giving them some gratitude about using the stuff. And it's like a win-win, man. It's so much fun. And they're very gracious that you're even stopping by their channel. I think that's freaking cool. You know, it's an all-around thing. Like I like helping content creators and I love having them come back and be like, "Man, it's so great you came and checked out my, you know, what I'm putting out there and what I'm doing." And I'm like, "Absolutely." How people interpret what I make and how they're going to use it in a video is just so unbelievably like rewarding for me. There's things I've written that I'm like, oh, this is totally for a horror or like some sci-fi thing. And then they use it for like some gameplay video, like playing some PS5 game or like a PC based game. I'm like, dude, I never would have thought to use it for that, but it looks awesome. Like it sounds awesome. It you know, works with the video and everything. It's
Oh
real cool
yeah.
stuff.
Well, I mean, I like as a film director who's used your stuff. Well, you've composed original scores for my feature length films over the years,
Yeah.
but that type of thing, it sort of has this like Christmas feel. Like you find a song, you find the right song, or you find a fascinating song. You're like, holy shit, I'm going to use that. The
Yeah.
fact that there's high utility in it, and then you can use it to enhance your own film projects. What that does is it makes a connection. It's a very weird thing because um like 0607, when we were at Black 20, we were using Kevin MacLeod's music. And when we were on the site, Compotech, we're like, this is actually free. You know, we're looking through, we look at the Creative Commons. Creative Commons, I think, was existed in 06. But whatever his generic license was, I was like, we were like, oh, we can actually use this stuff. And the stuff had a lot of character, you know, and it what it does is it when you place it in stuff that you shot and cut, it creates this weird you can't call it relationship because that's fucking weird because you don't know who the composer is really.
Yeah.
But there's a real attachment you get to the music catalog, you know, because like you put it in something, you put it in a film that you spent years on.
Right,
And
right.
so with your music, you know, there's a feature length horror film that Tim produced and then I directed, and you had done some original tunes for that, but some of the stuff I had also pulled from your catalog because it was just so unique. I was like, can we use this? You're like, yeah, you know, and that stuff is you almost get like territorial about it. Like, oh, I you know, I used that tune in my movie years ago, you know, but
Right, right.
you know, everyone did too, but you know, so there's this weird thing. That's an editor's mentality too.
I don't
If
think
you,
we've ever had this conversation. So this is fascinating to me.
oh,
Oh
okay,
yeah,
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 yeah, but no, there's a weird connection. I mean, that happens with editors too. Like if you edit a scene, sometimes you feel like you know the actor, and it happens that I do in all cases,
right, right.
but it's a weird thing. Um, you see all the the nuances in their performance, and you feel like you know them better,
Right.
you know, and that may or may not be true, but it's a fascinating thing, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I guess like after hearing you say it, it makes sense that like if you've gravitated towards a catalog and like at this point, you know, having, you know, been involved with and dealing with Kevin's music for years now, and also, you know, working directly with him. The interesting thing about his stuff is that I can just hear something in a video online now, and I'm like, oh, that's totally him. That this has got to be part of Kevin's catalog. I'm like, I'll look it up, and I'll be like, sure enough, You know, I'm like,
Oh
well,
yeah,
that's an obscure title, but there's little lines. I know the way he plays now, so it's like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That definitely is McLeod-esque. You know, I'm like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But you know, you have that too. You're starting to, some of your tunes are coming off and they're popping up, and I think one is like Creepy Piano of yours, where you're like, and I'm sure McLeod's the same way, where you're like, that fucking thing is, you know, you're like, that fucking song's popular. I'm like, yeah, it is, because it's the high utility, you know,
yeah,
it works. And then I love the one I did this series, or you helped produce, and it was Monster Kill, the series Monster Kill we did for Trauma Entertainment, and
it was like a
which the
contest, right? Wasn't there like a contest around it or something with
well,
the different
yeah,
edit?
I wanted to be like, I put on my Roger Corman producer hat, and we got some, raised a couple grand from Indiegogo, so I was giving like $500 to one filmmaker, make me a 10-minute film called Flying Snake Attack.
Right,
And they did that. Make me my wife Stephanie Perez came up with Merminators from outer
right.
space. She's like, here's $500, make me a 10-minute Merminator film. And they all had weird names. Ken Powell made Groom of the Bigfoot, and then I forget the last one. Wish Death 2 was one instead of Death Wish. It was
Oh yeah,
ridiculous.
like there was something. Yeah, like the world was coming to an end or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And you did some music for that. And um yeah,
I think
so
all the episodes, yeah, all the episodes, and then the in betweens that had um Maggie, right?
yeah,
Was
yeah,
it? Yeah,
Margaret Rose Champagne from the
yeah,
Amy Schumer show and all this stuff.
yeah.
And so we actually got some pretty cool. Sean Phillips did a cameo in
Oh,
Flying
that's
Snake Attack.
right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
And so we had, I had a few directors doing these shorts, and but I just, one of the songs, a few of the songs I was listening to them, and I think my comment to you at the time was like, this music is too good for these films, because they were, that was part of it. They were supposed to be very uh
Well, they're
no,
like
they're no budget,
right.
so
They're
it's supposed to,
48-hour film festival slash no budget, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like you're literally given like not they had more time than 48 hours, but like the premise is the same. It's like literally how you know uh,
yeah,
what are you
like
going to do with whatever resources you have?
yeah, to make
And,
this, I want to see what a $500 Bigfoot movie looks like, so
right.
that kind of thing. And but there was one tune we used. There's a trailer park. The opening is like a trailer park scene with
Yeah.
it was Double Dementia and Maggie Champagne, and I used the same Tim Kulig song for every beginning and every end, and it was like something like Creepy Core or something. It was
There
a
was
really
some weird
like,
whiny
yes,
like
Halloween thing. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I love
Um
that tune. And that's one of the other popular ones. I think it was maybe just called Creepy Choir or something. I forget. But
yeah.
um
Like that becomes a blur, especially since I kind of focus on horror stuff. I'll do. I think my catalog probably so far exists with about 100 or so of those style tunes.
yeah, yeah.
So, and there's more to come this year. I've absolutely can't wait to make more horror beds and everything. I've got a couple new pieces of software that I'm just itching to build. But I promised myself this last publication I did, I'm like, dude, you just broke 500. I'm like, just enjoy the
It's
holidays.
incredible. I mean,
Uh,
that's a short list of human beings that have done that, I mean, statistically, it's very rare. Like maybe there are like 1,000 people in the history of humanity that had published
yeah,
over 500 songs, but statistically it's like, it's got to be like almost one in a million. I don't know what the
yeah.
maybe 1.5 million or something, but it's pretty rare.
I know I did some research on it not that long ago. And one of the things that I found was that I think world record Guinness holder was something like 35,000 tunes, and it was some woman, and I don't know if she was in the States or in Western Europe or something, but she literally wrote like wrote and like published, I think, even like that's what's crazy to me. Um, but
Yeah,
like you
well, but
said,
that happens though. Like,
yeah,
let's say the number one person quite often is very far ahead of the number two
and you're
person.
like, what? You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. So that definitely, I think of like Michael Jordan. Like Michael Jordan was he was 10 times better than any player,
Yeah, you look at the normal curve and like
Yeah,
this side being like the absolute top percentile and this being low, it's like whoa, and like they're way over here, like the like completely off the scale, like
yeah, yeah.
super super outlier, you know. But I would say that you know having a couple like any major like the Stones, like the Rolling Stones, I'm sure they've written hundreds of tunes over the years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those bands that have stayed together for 40, 50 years, if they've put out an album every other year that has 10 to 15 tracks on it, you're gonna have a catalog, You're gonna have a catalog of tunes.
Well, yeah, I
Um,
mean they say Prince, Prince had like a dozen albums just filed away somewhere that we'll probably never get to hear.
sucks too. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that
because
that
they're nasty, they're really cool, but
I mean he wrote
whatever.
and performed, I think, all of Purple Rain. So or at least he wrote it all.
Yeah,
Um, so and that was like back in the early 80s because that movie came out in like 82, 84, like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it was it's all scored by his music. That
Yeah.
guy was remarkable. I really regret never going to one of his concerts. I
I think I I hope like over time people will like, obviously he's a mega superstar, but people like they don't realize that he may have been the best guitarist who ever lived. Like there's all
Yeah.
this stuff. It's so weird that like he's a huge deal, but like um his peers, even Eric Clapton, some interview was like, how does it feel to be best guitarist? He goes, go ask Prince. He's like, basically saying, I'm not it. This guy is, best living guitarist at the time.
Yeah.
Um, so, but yeah, all those bands like, Beatles, you remember they put out an anthology, and I think they found a few unpublished tunes that the Beatles did, and
Right.
so who knows how much lost music there is.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing too. Um, I had older like DAWs, digital audio workstations that I used, like Pro Tools. And there's like at the time I had that, I probably wrote 150, 200 tunes. Most of those are lost forever. I just literally moved on to another, you know, writing medium, Logic from the Apple environment. And I lost all that. And there's like two times during high school when I was writing constantly, even though that was all MIDI and I had to play it back and record it analog style.
Oh, such a
Um,
pain in the ass
oh
back
my
then.
God, it sucked.
Yeah,
It absolutely sucked. But even like twice I had hard drives die on me, and I had
yeah.
written again hundreds of things. So
Well, I do think it takes a certain it absolutely takes a certain technical acumen. Like you have to be, in order to do what you're doing. It is getting easier as technology is getting easier to use. But the truth is, you not only have to have the right mental attitude to be able to crank stuff out, and have the right drive to do it.
mm,
You need to be a highly skilled technician to be able to master these and crank them out. And then you have to be in that way. In another way of being a technician, you have to be musically a technician. I understand that you can fix a lot of stuff, but
mm,
I am like a very amateur keyboard player. I did it mostly in my youth. I could never crank out tunes the way you guys do. because it's my timing isn't as sharp. My my technical piano playing is flawed, and I don't have that drive in that way with music, So anyway, and I'm not trying to downplay myself, but there's a whole bunch of boxes that need to be checked
Yeah.
to have a Tim Kulig or to have a Kevin MacLeod. It's not just one thing.
Yeah. Well, that's generous of you. I appreciate that. The Some of my biggest tools are quantization and some of the technical playing. Like I can hear in my head the way it's supposed to come out, the like the timing of the notes and everything. And even if I have to play several parts of the song several different subset ways, I'll capture it that way just because I'm like, I can hear this part and I want it to sound exactly like this. And I just want to focus on that right now, And
Yep.
then I run it through an eighth note, a 16th note quantization filter to be like, all right, I need to tighten that up a little bit because I know the fastest note is about that. So I'm going to tighten that up. And if something's slightly off, I'm going to pull it around so it'll sound the way I want it to. So I guess I still do a little more step editing than I thought I did because I will do that. Like I'll record it. And I'm like, that's not exactly how I intended it, but the other notes are nice and tight. So I want to bring this one in, a little different. And there's times I
Yeah.
don't use quantization at all. Usually when I record something loose that I like it as loose as it is, and I'm just like, it's got a feel that I think I'm going to lose by quantizing it. And the good thing about that too is that modern DAWs like Logic, it's non-destructive. So when you quantize it and move the notes around, you're not actually doing any kind of destruction. It'll just, if you take the quantization off, it'll just go back to the first thing you
Revert.
recorded, which is
Yeah, that's
awesome.
cool.
You
Yeah,
know?
so I think there's a lot of things you're doing, and not to blow you full of smoke too much, but like there was a thing with like, so I think I probably occasionally do this with filmmaking, is that like if I try to sound personally, if I try to sound philosophical or smart about filmmaking, I usually don't. But if I talk casually about it with someone I'm comfortable with, I sometimes I'll say something and be like, "Oh, what did you say about that?" So my point is, I think with musicians like you and McLeod and stuff like that, is that like, I'm not saying you take your intelligence for granted, because I don't think you do, but there's a lot of high functioning that is going on that
Hmm.
maybe I'm not saying things are easy for you, but some things are easy for you because you've gotten because of the training and the discipline over the years.
Right, right. I see what you're saying. Like, I'll make a leap from A to G, and most people don't know B through F. You know what I mean? They have no
Yeah,
idea what those
right.
steps are. But I just do it subconsciously. I just know that, like, okay, I need to have all this stuff in a row, blah 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 blah. Here, this is the part I'm stuck on. It's like, how do I make
Yeah.
this transition to here when 98% of the song is done? It's literally like, oh, I captured everything I needed to. It's just a matter of transitions and
Well,
what I'm
yeah, it's
happy
it's
with.
it's that kind of thing where you're like, oh well, I just did this and this and this because this was my real problem. And a lot of people are like, what did you do there? Oh no, that's nothing. That's this and that. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing where that's just people who have been doing it for a long time and love it and have it. I don't know even know if it's about aptitude necessarily, but it's just as long as you have that drive and that passion.
Yeah,
And
I
you
think I think you're right. I think you get into patterns in the creative process, especially with something that is, I mean, math and music are very synonymous with each other. And
cousins, I don't know.
what's that? What's that? Yeah, they're
They're
yeah, they're very close
cousins.
cousins, if not brother sister. It's so uh, the way you think about both of those things is very similar. Even though from an art perspective, a creative perspective, everybody always thinks, or people often think, rather, not everybody, but people often think that there's this looseness and this like casualness that encompasses creating art, when in fact, there's a lot of discipline and a lot of like repeating patterns to capture
Yeah.
the thing that you want to capture, right? I have specific patterns I go through with patch selection and, noodling around associated with cinematic scores as opposed to my glitch stuff or, uh, 8-bit video game sounding things or the lo-fi album I just released that's coming out on Monday, the 18th. You know, uh, there's very specific patterns I put in place to get into that creative mindset and that creative space. Because if I didn't have if I didn't have an idea of what the template was supposed to be, or like where to start or what sounds to have, I would just be here wasting hours, you know, not understanding, where to even begin. But, having some of that I guess it's like a pre-setup. Like it's not necessarily like even templated uh project files that I select or anything like that. In some cases I do, and like just for efficiency purpose. But, a lot of times I'll bring in a blank project file and load it in real time, knowing what kind of tracks I'm going to need for, say, lo-fi as opposed to a cyberpunk album, Um, but I guess that saves a ton of time and frees up a lot of thinking for the creative aspect of it and not about the administrative, like technical part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I
That
mean, that'll kill your that's not that different from video editing.
okay,
It's like all your footage and all your files before you start editing have to be incredibly ordered and labeled, and the project has to be set up a certain way, and then you can begin editing, and
right,
that's when the creating can happen. But if you don't set things up properly, or if the computer itself is having a problem, then it's these really annoying hurdles that get in the way of actually producing and creating anything creative. And I think too, if we're men of a certain age, if you will, but if you look back at some of the technical hurdles that you and I had to deal with computers
right,
back we're talking essentially mid to late 90s, by the time we're able to, let's say, own a computer of our own, and the extreme limitations of the machines, that the how much they crashed, just taking into account like the programs that we're putting on these things, uh something like Pro Tools or Adobe Premiere or something.
right.
And you know it's like forcing this antique computer to use this artistic software. And
Oh yeah,
I just had so many sleepless nights. Some of my earliest feature length films were just awful. Not having enough hard drive, like having to edit the first third of the film, and like uh we had stuff backed up on tape, but essentially having to erase the raw footage and then doing the second part,
oh
erase
my
the
God,
raw
that must
footage.
have been. I didn't realize how extreme that was. That must have been like your heart sinks. Like, my God, if this gets ruined,
Yeah, I mean it
you
was
know?
it was awful. I mean, there were nights too, like in the early days, you were like you had to dump stuff on like Beta SP from a PC computer. So you're going to like HB Communication, try to rent the deck. And so anyway, it was, you know, nervous breakdowns.
Oh God.
And then you're doing this shit and you're like, does anyone fucking care? Like, you're just doing this stuff. But anyway, so by the time it gets to now, like, I don't know about you, but like you have various computers, but you have a nice Mac Studio. and I have a beautiful Mac Mini, and I'm like delighted by the reliability of some of these things.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
and the affordability of supplemental backup systems. I mean, I have I have my song files in three places,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I have it like on a thumb drive. I have it on a backup hard drive. That's in the studio USB like little thing it sits on, right? Like I think I talked to you about that.
Yeah, yeah, it's a
Um,
an extra hub or something. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but it also houses like two other chips. One's an extension of the actual physical hard drive of the computer. The other one I use as a backup for my songs for a third place. You know what I mean? Like it's like literally how many ways can I save these things? Because that shit's never happening to me again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm gonna have project files all over the place. Like I don't throw out old my old Macs anymore. Like I have two
No, no.
iMacs. One is a backup computer over here at another station to do, recording at, and the other's in my closet. And that represents like 20 years of things,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And I have various like little thumb drives in drawers in this office, and I'm like, I'm never throwing those out because there's project files on there at some point, sometime, like I may have to go back to, and I'm just be like, uh, why did you throw out? You had space for it. Do not launch it. Do not get rid of it. You know?
Yeah, yeah. And if the thing if an iMac breaks down on you, especially the older ones, um, and like you're worried about stuff being on that drive, like you don't want to just throw it in the garbage can, and you don't have the specialized tools, man, you had to like destroy that thing with an axe
Oh yeah,
because it was like,
the clear one, right? The one that had like it still had the CRT monitor coming
yeah,
out.
it's
Like
like
that one, you had to like literally pull like a office space and like smash it on the ground and like break
yeah,
it. You know?
kill that hard drive. But no, I mean it's yeah. So anyway, but I mean all that stuff I think builds resilience. I think about that stuff too. I have a great computer now, office, awesome Black Magic camera and all this stuff. And it's like the tools that I have now are more powerful than um I mean, let's say 20 years ago, which is 2000, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, my 4K Blackmagic camera, where I can shoot in Apple ProRes RAW or Apple ProRes like HQ 4K.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, like that's better than George Lucas had.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's really like,
That's crazy.
yeah. So anyway, but in regard to music, no, it's like, um, I think it's cool. You're really like embracing the tools that you have now and cranking out all the stuff. And so, man, 500, dude, you smashed
500.
it, smashed right
Smashed
through
it.
that.
Let's see, so what's next? My big thing is like, well, onward and upward to the next 500 and a race to 1,000, you know?
The race
I'll
to
be
1,000, man. That's cool. That's cool.
I'll be happy with breaking 700 next year, to be honest. But
Is there any friendly competition in the space? I know, McLeod's got the brass ring.
yeah, our mutual friend from Norway, Alexander Nakarada, is rapid. He's following in Kevin's footsteps as well. So he's totally trying to get as much into the 4-digit club as possible as well. So I think that's awesome. I always
Yeah,
joke
that's
with
good.
him that we're part of a common thread on Discord, and I know when a new track is coming out because he'll use the Mid Journey in there, and all of a sudden, like I'll see his username, and it's like these images are coming up. I'm like, oh, Alex is releasing another tune this week. What's it gonna be like? What's the image look like? I'm like, oh, it's heavy metal goth. All right, it's like, yep. There's gonna be some quintessential riffs because he's an awesome guitarist. He's like on just those awesome like orchestral like metal riffs and stuff, like just really cool. He'll do that, some orchestral stuff, some Celtic, like all sorts of, it's just really cool stuff. Big plug
Yeah.
for you, Alex.
Oh man, and that the Scandinavian musicians are just insane, man. Like the whole
Yeah.
area, but just like the culture and what stuff comes out of there.
Yeah.
Craziest films come out of there. Craziest music. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Um, but on a side note, slightly self-indulgent, but so
Yes.
VHS Massacre documentaries, which you scored both of them. Um, for those who don't know, they not only were celebrated in the New York Times in this summer in July, like glowing reviews, but those two docs, at least according to IMDb this week, in regard to popularity, VHS Massacre 2 is the number one documentary on the video store era,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's VHS 2, and then VHS 1 is the number 3. And so I really think you could make the case that they are the most popular, because that was the category. There's different ways you can slice IMDb.
Yeah.
Most popular, highest voted, all stuff.
Right.
And almost all those categories, it's top 10, but popularity, it's 1 in 3. So I think you can make the case that we're the most popular documentary series
That's
on
pretty
the
wild.
video store era. Yeah.
That's pretty, that's amazing.
It's a little specific. I'll admit it's a little specific, but that's what it is. It's a special interest doc,
Well, I think the authenticity came through for both of us because shit, we grew up in that era, both of us either on a full-time or at least at the very least a part-time basis moonlighted in video stores in our 20s.
Yeah.
That's just what we did, I mean, you had a family member that owned several, and a good friend of mine as well that owned those, and then like by extension other like extended family that got us into it in the first place, with their stores. And it's just like, you know like we lived Clerks. People are watching Clerks, and think it's this amazing movie, and it's like, well, it's so much funnier to us because we experienced all that.
Yeah.
That all is like near and dear to us.
I think you made me watch Clerks. I was thinking about it. I'm pretty sure you were like, it was Fun Stuff video store in Southington across from Kevin's Comics.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know about this. And I think you were like, fucking watch it. I'm pretty sure. And then other ones like El Mariachi, I think that was more like,
I did not do that.
Mike Aransky. And yeah, that might have been Aransky.
Because I don't remember seeing that whole movie for some reason. I feel like that's a movie I have to go back and revisit. Like either I watched it and it was so long ago I don't recall, because
Yeah.
I'm not really into, it's like a Western, right? Like kind of like a,
yeah, but yeah, it's based in, it's an action movie based in Mexico about mariachis, but it definitely has that flair for sure.
that Western vibe.
Yeah. It's more contemporary, but it absolutely has that vibe because it's there's standoffs and all that stuff. So, yeah. So like but anyway, yeah, it is funny like how we came up through that time and how we educated ourselves and how we, all this weird stuff. But to think about it coming from that, like, but essentially Central Connecticut, where absolutely nothing was going on in the film industry. And it was, 2 hours to New York, 2 hours to Boston. And this was a dead spot. And no one really made independent films. They really didn't.
No. There was some film clubs in Connecticut, and I think in some regards, like associations and like, amateur / professional folks getting together. There was a group down in New London. I don't know how active they are still.
Yeah, that stuff. I should say that stuff absolutely emerged, but I would say that probably emerged from the mid '90s into the late '90s, right?
Yeah,
but I think
there was a big tick up because uh who was the actor that played Hellboy?
Oh,
Um
Ron Perlman.
yeah, he was involved with some company that was going to get started based out of New York that was looking to go into the New London area and start building studios, and
Mhm.
they were like lobbying the state of Connecticut for, these tax incentives, like, hey, bring up, there's beautiful places for us to shoot in the state, plus you give us tax incentives and we'll bring work here and we'll bring, Hollywood, like it's just the Atlantic Coast Hollywood and blah blah blah, you know and it's something, just some legislator or something just got poo-pooed about the whole thing, and it just went
It just died.
into
Yeah,
the
it was
toilet.
at Sonolus or something. There was something. Yeah, it was down. I think down near the coast. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think yeah. I mean, like basically, uh, post El Mariachi and Clerks, a lot of stuff started to pop up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking more of like being a freshman or a sophomore in high school and just realizing like A, we were broke, like no one
Right.
had any fucking money, and then knowing that you wanted to make films or make music and just having to um fight to do that against the backdrop of just I mean you had two or three different jobs, you know.
Right.
I was, you know, working at Wendy's and that kind of stuff where the hope for being like a professional creative was it wasn't really realistic when we were growing up, you
Right.
know.
Right.
It was rare, but
Well, a lot of it too was like we were building other things. We wanted to do this and build this, but it was like we wanted to do it our own way. We didn't want to do it the Hollywood way, where you have to go out to LA and, you know, spending, enormous amounts of time, energy, and money, starving yourself, working, two, three other jobs, in between, if it was acting, well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, acting, getting a producer gig or some back end gig, you still have to be available at all different times for those opportunities, and it's a lot of who and just, a lot of
yeah.
nepotism, and it's
Well,
just
it's hard too because like depending on the discipline you're picking, like you're for filmmaking is, especially at that time, no, like no budget filmmaking really only came out of um, cheap nonlinear editing,
right, right.
because previous to that you were shooting on film and
16 if you wanted to be taken seriously,
yeah, and you transfer to that, and then we use the earliest form of Premiere to cut. But previous to that, I was shooting on VHS because that's like whatever grandma's camcorder that no one wanted to use.
Right, right,
You
right.
that you borrow your friend, Phil Goret's VCR. He brings his VCR. I use my VCR, and we make these really primitive edits.
Right.
That's how I learned to edit because no one had any fucking money. But like but previous to that, I mean it was all cutting on film. I mean there was
Right.
Super 8, but Super 8 was uh people didn't cut on Super 8 that much. They mostly shot a roll of 3.5 minute film
Right.
and developed it, maybe screened it, and then
Yeah,
later
super,
with
like super short. Like
yeah,
super shorts.
yeah. So, really was like the nonlinear editing was the thing that, and I thought about this too. There was like you could edit at public access TV, which I did, but they'd want to air what you showed. Like, so it wasn't,
Right.
you couldn't sit there and make a 90-minute film and cut there for months and months and then not air it, so
Yeah.
you really couldn't do it. So and then recording music was like the high school that we went to, Plainville High, they actually had a booth and everything, right? It was There was a
Well,
keyboard area.
we never recorded there. Um, we all end up we always ended up going off-site for that. We had uh whole PA system and everything. We had like practice rooms and stuff that were noise isolated. But for the real recording, it just blew my mind. The freshman year of high school, uh, we took a handful of cover songs and then um, two or three originals, right? And one of them was mine as a freshman. And we went to New Haven to a freaking mansion. Okay. Happens to
Wow.
be Ace Frehley's studio, right? And it was the most craziest place. This guy, Vic, um, oh man, it's like Vic Fromm or Vic, what was his last name? Man, I'm sorry if he ever hears this thing and I forgot his name, but um John Smeda, our teacher, our math, our high school, not math, our high school music teacher.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
he was very good friends with this guy, and this guy basically, whether John paid for it, like at a discount, or I never even asked him about that. I took John out years ago for like dinner once, like catch up with him after being out of high school for 10 years. And I always wondered, I'm like, how did we afford to like do the, oh wait, when we sold the albums the next year when we went to the studio, it helped pay for the studio. So
Oh,
that's
you'd
how that's
sell them around the school to the parents and stuff like
yeah,
that. Is
and
that
we used it as
oh
a fundraiser to like to be able to
incredible?
do the next year recording studio. So it's like it was always like the big year-end thing we did, you know. It was like off time. It was like a 3-day weekend or something when it was like really downtime for the studio to do anything, and they'd just make time for us, which is just awesome. But I mean, who gets to do that?
Yeah, yeah,
That was just so awesome,
yeah. It
And
is
to this
true.
day, it's just one of the best experiences I ever had musically.
Yeah, I mean it's very interesting. The I don't know, the line of our lives and coming up through all the different technologies. But I think not to make it generational because there's not that much meaning in it, but I do think we've been able to transition from kind of roll with varying and the new technologies and stuff
Oh
like that.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
I could say personally that as far as AI is concerned and some of the AI, assistants, language models, image generators, and more likely even more so down the future, some of the music generation stuff, even like all those are going to be tools I use going forward. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even the image generation, some of the stuff I wrote, I wrote a script and then I had to generate images. Like, it's you could spend like a couple hours um getting a usable image and then
Right.
generated by Midjourney or something. And then even still, you take it to Photoshop and you have to change some of the color palette and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's definitely it's a tool for what you want to do. And in regard to AI, talking with other college professors and stuff like that, it's like and other people in the industry, um, uh, I think the main thing is just to be upfront with it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And like I wrote the script, no, because the funny thing is I published that book, um, Grand False Killings, which
Mhm.
you wrote the forward for, so thanks.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Um, uh, but uh, in in it, I said, no AI was used in the writing of the script because it's
Right.
very important that people know that. But then I said, the images were generated with Midjourney with additional manual manipulation or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just be straight up honest about what it is,
Yeah.
um, and that's the important thing, and I think it's fine.
I think it is. But that goes back to like other things, like where if- people are going to question what is and isn't art, regardless of what tools come out. Case in
Yeah, sure.
point, case in point about that is, um, you know, there's I just had one. There was something visual. Oh, painters, right?
Hmm.
There's various style of painters. Um, One of them being there's an American painter that used to project Norman Rockwell. He used to project the image onto a canvas and then paint what he wanted,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Some people would say that that's cheating, right? Or you don't know perspective. So what you did is you projected it, blah, blah, blah. He still has to render the image. Like it
Oh
still
yeah.
has to look amazing, you know? Like it
Yeah.
still has to look like something that you want to be. And the color palette that they use and the color theory they understand and the way that, the composition and everything. Like they still need to know all those other things to make it appealable on a level where somebody wants to consume that art, you know?
Yeah, well, I think some of the Renaissance painters would they'd have a room with a single point letting light in, and it would create a projection.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
would, so they did it. I mean, they did that 300 years ago. So,
Right.
it's like,
Right.
yeah, it's
It's still your interpretation regardless of what tools you use. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, um I just think that that's a wall that for some people is a permanent barrier. It'll never come down. But
Mhm.
for others that kind of move and flow with the times and with the materials and the tools that are available to create and be artistic, um, like the idea that somebody could generate music through some tool that doesn't otherwise have, a strong background in theory or
Mhm.
a strong understanding of the way that you put music together in general is just kind of freaking awesome to me because people that don't like it may fall into a category where they're just doing a lot of loops and making these like club beats and stuff like that, but there's plenty of DJs that do exactly what I'm saying right now,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
very well renowned and appreciated, and they have their own releases and remixes that they release and make plenty of money on, you know
Well,
and it's like they never
the
wrote a single part of it.
yeah, well, the best equivalent I can think of that, and about other people have said this too, is like um collage, right?
Right.
So certainly, so you can do collage, and certain fine artists can look at collage and say, well, it's slightly lower art form, they could be snobby about it. But the finest collage is better than most fine art, so
Right.
I'm not saying it's not fine art, but collage is different. Let's say you're taking photos from magazines, but
Yeah.
that could be incredible,
Yeah.
and so
Well, it's just like found object art. You know what I mean? Some people think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
people think it's garbage. Like there's an withering up orange in the center of the room, and they want 15 grand for that because they've been doing found art object stuff for 15 years, and they're well renowned or whatever. And like somebody will snub their nose at it or whatever. I'm like, well, if somebody appreciates it enough to spend 15, like that's their business. That's their,
yeah.
you know?
There's always going to be that blurry line between bullshit and fine art, and
Right.
I find myself um being very pragmatic with it, and
Because who am I, right? The
yeah,
same
yeah.
reason, the same reason I took your and Kevin's advice about just publish it, just get it out there, is the same, you know, answer to a question that I keep bringing up in podcasting with people. And I think it's just like to reinforce it. It's that I don't get to tell people what they like, So I just
Yeah,
have to make it
yeah,
and see what resonates with people. And
yeah.
in some cases, I'm making it for me and me alone anyway. I just hope it resonates with people, but it's like this recent thing, like the lo-fi tunes. I'm like, I never done those. I'm like,
And they're
I
fucking
gotta try
great,
some of
dude.
those.
I'm like,
Thanks, man.
the lo-fi stuff is like, because I like that stuff, like bands like Tycho and other this, they do this real chill stuff,
Yeah.
but engaging and fascinating, and that stuff, and I'll just listen to that, so that stuff's great, but it's yeah, we have this interesting relationship, I think, with music. Like we can be, or art in general. You could be snobby about it, you could be relaxed about it, but I think you know, I do think as a musician, it's incredibly difficult to try to make a connection with people on the internet. And
Absolutely.
I think giving it away and allowing people to have use it as a utility in a weird way allows this deep connection that would never have existed otherwise, you know. So it's a wonderful thing, you know.
Yeah, and
It's
I think
a
it's a different place now than say 20, 30 years ago for a couple different reasons. There's more content than ever online through numerous social media sites. And there's this drive to have, you know, new unique sounds all the time because there's just so much being consumed online that there's really no other way to propagate your music right now that's better than to put it in the hands of creators and be like, I don't want anything. Like this,
yeah.
I'm doing this for you and I'll find other ways. But
Well,
like this is, you know what I mean?
because think about the alternative. The alternative is this like record label brute force,
Yep.
like uh, advertising based uh uh money funded pushing of music through
Right.
pay to play radio, uh probably pay to play Spotify. I don't know how that works, but that kind of thing where it's this sort of brute force pushing of this is the new thing and we want you all to listen to it, you know.
Right.
And there's a deep rejection of that, and that's just evidenced by the state of the record industry altogether, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear a song and sometimes you're like, oh brother, okay, you want us to listen to this stuff, and to some degree I get it. It's sort of a Darwinism, right? You need
Yeah.
to make it. The stuff on the radio is like, it needs to be catchy, so it's hyper simplistic to the point of immediately annoying, you know.
Right. Right.
So if you like, I think too, like, that's not an appetizing game to play, and people like me and you can't, we can't do that. We can't
Right.
bankroll that, you
No.
know.
No. No, I
uh,
can't. I don't think there's any way I could possibly have gotten into the hands of as many people as I have in as short a period of time as I have. Like that would have taken me 20, 25 years in traditionals, if at all, you know?
or maybe never. Yeah, it's like I mean, you think about, like, there is $1 billion business trying to make, and this is also what's fascinating too. So you and McLeod, right? This idea that McLeod is probably more popular than Beyonce
Right.
in the fact that I'm not saying that to be divisive. Pick another person if you want to. Who else is popular? I
I don't
don't
know,
know.
J-Lo,
J Lo, right?
you
Yeah.
know?
J Lo might be more popular. I don't know, but let's say McLeod has been technically listened to more than J Lo, right? It's
Yeah.
very possible,
Right.
very possible, because I was in. I think I was telling you I was at SeaWorld
Yeah.
and they
And
were
they were
playing a
playing one of their
McLeod. They
tunes.
were playing a McLeod tune,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's and a lot of the people I happen to listen to on YouTube use McLeod stuff, you know, but his personality is not promoted through PR or agency,
Right.
right? It, but his music is listened to probably, possibly more than any other living person on
Right.
the planet, due to the way the internet works
Right.
and the way
Right.
he's given it all for free. Yet he is not personally promoted as celebrity, and it peels back, I think, the idea of celebrity a little bit,
Hmm.
because you start to go like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Because
What is it? What is celebrity really? Is it just a marketing tool and nothing more?
yeah, it's the pitting of the face with the music, and the that combination of sellability.
Right.
Se- Sexy looking girl, sexy looking guy, and pitted with the music. We can
Yep.
sell this as a package. We can do
Yep.
live shows.
Familiar sounding voice. Just listen to a pop station today. Don't listen again. Come back in 5 years, and guess what? There's going to be songs on there that sound very similar to that, which you heard like 5 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Maybe there's some new sample that's popular with the kids these days, for drums or for some like electronic sample or whatever, some like call out,
yep,
whatever. But
yeah,
like it's pretty much the same, you know?
yeah. So it's really like a, well, yeah, definitely reality check of like what's actually happening,
Yeah. That's
because
that reality check too going forward is like for me it's at like I never want to be that, right? Like I never want to experience that feeling ever, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing, right?
yeah,
But
I mean that you might recoil at that. Like I
yeah,
can't, first of all, I can't be that. Uh, obviously I can't,
yeah,
I mean, like, it's fucking, you know, dad over here.
yeah,
So there's like a reality to it. But that, that there's a wonderful point to that too, is like the work that the creative work that you do, creative work that I do. It is in the way it's maybe best of both worlds, because you know that millions of people have listened to you. You know that your work is respected and used and perpetuated throughout the internet,
yeah,
and your life has you, not just for that. I mean, the most important thing is family, but your art has utility, and that's cool.
yeah,
Maybe that's better than celebration as utility, and especially for men, right?
yeah,
we
yeah.
like that
You
we
want to
like
know
that.
functionally you're doing a thing,
Yeah,
right?
am I
You're giving
helping
back,
people?
you're building something, helping people. Um,
Yeah, but if
Providing a
you,
service that's has value to somebody else. They feel like they feel like they got something more than
yeah,
they expected. Like to do that is like the utmost. Like that's the biggest dopamine hit you could ever give me. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
it's a good thing to feel. And if you think about some of the other trappings of celebrities, like if you think of um I heard an interview with Ben Affleck. So, not to get off on a tangent, but so we grew up in that era. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, they did
Goodwill Hunting, right?
Goodwill
Yeah.
Hunting, and that was inspiring, even though it was a multi-million-dollar film, and they went to Harvard and all this stuff. Like,
Right.
definitely not exactly what we thought it was, but those guys, they were New England based, Boston based, and there was something about them that to this day I connect with.
Yeah.
But like, but if you hear Ben Affleck talk about celebrity, like, he fucking hates it, dude. He wants to have nothing to do with it. And as we're solidly middle age at this point, it's like, oh shit, like, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Like,
Right.
I definitely want to, like, I want to be able to pay my bills and live in a nice home, but I want to be able to go to Dunkin' Donuts and not be harassed,
Right.
So
Exactly.
so it's like, it really calls into question, man. Maybe you and McLeod figured it out. Maybe you really nailed it.
Yeah. Well, I mean the venue and the delivery structure of how we do what we do is such that you don't ever really ever need to come in contact with somebody. In fact, they don't even need to have a face to what's going on. Maybe
Yeah.
they don't even care, you know? You
Yeah.
know, they're like, no, I resonate with the music, so that's fine. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
The end. You
Yeah,
know,
and
they
the, and
probably
the, and there, if there are selfish people who are like, "Fuck that guy, I'm using his," you never fucking have. You definitely never have to hear from them, you know. So,
right. Well, it's just
um,
like, like the non-attribution, extended license thing or whatever. It's an honor system. Like, look, if you're gonna use it, just just hook me up with just a,
yeah,
a,
put,
a
put my
modicum.
yeah the name of the song and who I am,
Yeah.
and just
Or
put it. Yeah,
or throw me 20 bucks if you don't want to do that. And you can use it
yeah,
on anything. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
just give me the courtesy of that. If I'm gonna give it away to you, at least let people know where you got it.
yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
that's a
You don't.
small price to pay if it's
Yeah,
possible, you
you don't
know?
want to be anonymous because you are a artist who has pride in your work. So that's the price. It's just if you use one of my tunes, just put me in the credits. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Case
Not a
closed.
big deal. Yeah.
You know? So, I'm sure there's people out there that have used it for commercial purposes or something at this point that should have tossed me a buck or two, and it's like, whatever. You know,
Yeah,
at
I
the end of the
mean,
day,
yeah, it's true. Maybe you got uh but
but from every one of those, Tom, from every one of those situations, there's somebody that throws me some money on PayPal, and I'm like, they didn't reference a tune. Who is this? Audrey Hinckley.
yeah, and
40,
then
40 bucks. Like, what?
who are
Like
you?
they're just like, clearly used my music in a couple of projects or whatever and felt compelled to contribute to the cause, which I like. Thank you, everybody that's done that so far. I really appreciate it. It's a incredibly gracious reminder that it's working, you know?
Yeah,
And that's really what this is all about. So I cannot wait to do the next 500 and beyond. My big push next year in 2024 is, like I said, to try to get around 700, get to 700. If I can go beyond that, great. But you know, that's my that's my line in the sand. Like if I can do 50 tunes every quarter, I'll easily get there. But listen, it might get a little crazy one quarter and do a bunch of intros or you know something
which
like yeah,
people fucking need. I will tell
yeah,
you, man. I
podcast
cannot tell
beds, just like
you,
little.
in editing gigs or films or just at work, and you would be surprised. Corporate videos, academic settings, people need intros and outros. They really
Yeah,
fucking do. And I
yeah,
think, maybe a musician might say like, "Oh, well, I don't want to just like crank out 50 and that's my 50." And I'll tell you, fucking do it because
yeah,
people will absolutely use it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
so
Well, remind people some of your places. You're going to be back on here probably sooner than later, but
oh, where to go to?
plug the movies, plug
Oh
your
yeah.
stuff.
Okay, so yeah, well, one of the cool things, Exorcism of Fleet Marish, distributed by MVD. There's a if you want to keep it simple on YouTube, there's the horror channel, and it's currently streaming for free. It's got over 100,000 people have watched Exorcism of Fleet Marish on there, but then it's also available on Tubi and Freevee.
Okay.
The VHS Massacre docs, VHS Massacre 1 and 2. Part 1 is on Peacock, which is a huge deal because that's NBC Universal. And then part 2, they're both on Tubi and
Yep.
Prime, I believe. And so that's a place where you could watch the VHS Massacre documentaries. They go from everything of the rise and fall of physical media, and the second one deals with more like what's happening with streaming services
Yeah.
as compared to the video store era. So there's a lot of cool stuff and in those docs, and like I said, New York Times loved them. And so I think it's definitely something worth checking out. And then
Socials,
through
like
social,
yeah.
a lot of it's branded VHS Massacre. So Instagram VHS Massacre, it's VHS Massacres. Twitter's VHS Massacre. TikTok is VHS Massacre. Facebook is VHS Massacre. Yeah. So check me out any one of those places and friend me up.
Sweet.
And, yeah.
Well, thanks again, Tom Seymour, for being here for the 502nd song episode extravaganza. And yeah, man, it just I'm just kind of pumped, you know. I know we've got some projects coming up that will be able to use some of the stuff that I'm doing now and some of the stuff I'm going to be using or putting together in 2024 and beyond. So we just got to keep coming up with the projects, man. That's the whole, like, it just keeps this train, this creativity train going, you know. That everybody out there that's taking this stuff and using it and going out there and checking out how people are utilized, like, okay, there's like this drive for horror, there's this drive for this. That's going to be a big thing next year, is like literally just figuring out what people have been searching for, you know, the third and fourth quarter of 2023, and just boom, hitting the ground running with stuff that you want. So again, everybody, thank you so much for coming back and checking out Tim Kulig Free Music Podcast. See you next time.